Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's SEFI at Work session. This is the second webinar arranged by the SEFI Special Interest Group, Entrepreneurship in Engineering Education. And our today's topic explores an important shift in how we think about innovation in technology development. Moving beyond traditional predict then act approaches toward more adaptive ways of navigating uncertainty. We'll be discussing concepts such as effectuation, perceived environmental uncertainty, and the CAVE framework and what they can teach us about decision making. This is particularly relevant conversation for engineering education, entrepreneurship, and innovation practice, where uncertainty is often not exception but the norm. We are very pleased to have Ruth Koopman with us today to guide us through these ideas. I encourage everyone to think not only about the theory, but also about how these concepts apply in your own projects, teaching, or organizations. So with that, let me warmly welcome Mr. Ruth and hand over the floor to him.
Okay. Thank you, Asif. I will start this presentation in a moment, but first I want to encourage you to respond by chat, by raising a hand or whatever, because I like to be interactive, and that's where the participants have a job to do. I presumed that most of the people don't have much familiarity with effectuation, the CAVE framework, and the perceived entrepreneurial uncertainty, and so on. So I will explain a little bit about that. Or in fact, most of the presentation will explain that. And then I will explain a framework or a concept which I'm working at the moment on for the entrepreneurship conference in November in Antwerp. And then I will give some examples how you can use it and so on. But first of all, I would like to explain or introduce myself a little bit. I'm as said, Ruud Koopman. I studied aeronautical engineering and did the master in industrial organization. I was the founder of the School of Small Business and Retail Management at Saxion University. I've been a few years in the regional parliament, so I have a little bit knowledge about politics. I have been the coach coordinator of the High-Tech Business Incubator Venture Lab. That's a collaboration between Saxion, University of Twente, and the regional parliament. And I did a PhD in entrepreneurship education. And at the moment, I'm also the country vice president of the Netherlands of the European Council of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. So in general, I know about a lot of things I know a little bit about. And that's perfect for being entrepreneurship teachers. But first of all, I will give you a short assignment. I don't know if you have a paper or something. I'll give you 1 minute to draw an entrepreneur. And then tell me what you draw. And if you don't have a pen or paper, imagine what you would like to draw then. I also do this often in my class. Unfortunately, I didn't found a new Rembrandt or Van Gogh, but most of the students are very good at drawing something and telling what they wanted to draw. So who wants me to tell what he or she draw as an entrepreneur? How does it look like? Yes. Leah?
So I have drawn kind of somebody in kind of in a suit with a briefcase, so kind of very much kind of like a kind of a polished businessman. Originally, I was thinking more kind of like, you know, kind of crazy hair and a little bit wild looking. But then I was thinking that's kind of more kind of crazy inventor and not quite entrepreneur. So I went for kind of a more polished business look.
Good, nice. Someone else? Not? What most people do is they draw a human being.
I also draw a human being, and instead of the head, I draw a big brain.
Okay. Most of them draw a man with a suit, as you already said, Niam, a tie, smiling, and success. And I also asked AI to draw an entrepreneur, and that came up with the picture which is shown next to this. Now, do you recognize some of these pictures, some of these items, persons, people, how you want to call them? Does anybody know what's in the top right?
Building blocks.
Sorry?
Building blocks.
Yeah, building blocks. Okay. Does someone recognize other people here? The Ninja Turtles, I see. Yes? Other people? Below that? Simpsons? Does someone recognize what's left above the Donald Duck and Quick, Quack, and Quack? Asterix and Obelix, yes. And what's in between Asterix and Obelix? South Park, that's also one of them, but that's not in between Asterix and Obelix, I guess. Does someone know what that item there in between Asterix and Obelix is called? Idefix. Yes. It's strange that people recognize a dog with a name, but it's only a square block, one block. So people are very good at recognizing things in their environment. And that's very helpful, because if you go to a new place and you see a new type of chair, most of the people recognize it as a chair, although they have never seen that type of chair exactly before. And that's also what's happening with entrepreneurship. A lot of people think they recognize an entrepreneur, and that's good, but that doesn't always meet what it's capable of. Because if I see a table, I can also use that as a chair. And sometimes I see a type of chair which I didn't recognize. So which of these people is an entrepreneur? Is it someone who's collecting money, who is grabbing money? Is this one? Is it someone who is polluting the world? And I would like to specify this guy, a homeless man who is collecting bins or bottles, plastic bottles, from the garbage bin. Think about it. Is that an entrepreneur or isn't it? Well, some of the people say, well, it's not an entrepreneur because he is not registered as an entrepreneur. Other people say it is an entrepreneur because he is collecting money, value. He found an idea, etc., etc. So what I do in my class, I often discuss this page with students about what now exactly is an entrepreneur. And often I say an entrepreneur is someone who sees possibilities and knows where to find them. It is not only this, because a lot of people see possibilities, but they don't act. So what you have to do is also, as an entrepreneur, you have to be active or successful application. And that means what the entrepreneurial process is as shown by Shane and Venkatamara. First, you have to recognize opportunities. Then you have to prepare for opportunities. And then you have to exploit the opportunities. And that's what Shane and Venkatamara showed about the entrepreneurial process. And what we also often see is that they say, and it's someone from 1974 who said, entrepreneurs have less risk aversion than managers do. Entrepreneurs like to take risk. That's often said. But already in 1980, Brockhaus did a research and he found out, it's a research between entrepreneurs, newly hired and newly promoted managers. And he found out that there is no difference among entrepreneurs, the starting managers and the promoted managers in how they perceive risk. And that's what also fits with some other theories about entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship is not someone who takes more risk, but I think it's someone who deals in a different way with risk and is very good at dealing with uncertainty. What is uncertainty? Uncertainty, as I use the definition of Millikan, is the perceived inability to predict something accurately. But there are different types of uncertainty, or as he says, the perceived environmental uncertainty. And that's the state uncertainty, the uncertainty to change the components of the environment, uncertainty about change of the components of the environment. They have the effect uncertainty. That is, the effect of the environment on the person's organization is uncertain. Or the result uncertainty. That is, it is not well to predict the consequences of the response of the options, what's happening. So there are three different types of uncertainty with all three different ways to deal with it. By the way, you don't have to make screenshots or whatever because the presentation is recorded. But it's also, I have the list of publications I have at the end of this presentation, and I can share that with you. So you can all get all the links or all the papers and all the things that I'm using here. Now I want to show you a little video. It's from Stuart Reed. It's about decision making in uncertainty. And after that, I will show you what things is being used, what's been used, and how that deals with uncertainty, and what's the message or the model he's using for this type of research and this type of decision making under uncertainty.
Rude, I'm sorry, was there supposed to be sound on the video?
Oh, yeah, sorry. There is no sound?
Unfortunately, we didn't hear, yeah.
Okay, then I might have missed something. I'll show. One moment. I see the problem. I forgot to use the. Oh.
Hello and welcome to IMD's 10-minute series. I'm Stuart Reed, Professor of Marketing here at IMD, and I'm here to tell you about some of the things that I do to make IMD's tagline, Real World, Real Learning, come to life in the classroom. An area of my research is focused on what happens when people move from being in a relatively mature market, such as the refrigeration appliances market, to being in a more uncertain situation. And recently, we have witnessed a tremendous amount of change even in the very mature refrigeration appliances industry. We have seen such advancements as the mega fridge, as new distribution channels for how the way people buy refrigerators. We've seen the internet fridge, which will automatically order new milk for you when you run out of milk. We've heard announcements about magnetic cooling, which promises to change the way refrigerators work and make refrigerators more than 60% more efficient. We've seen government legislation requiring the contents of refrigerators to change from using CFCs to using more environmentally friendly things. And we've even seen the bar fridge. Where was that when I was in college? What's fascinating about these two situations is that these are very representative of the kind of problems our participants face. That they start out in a very predictable industry where you can use history, you can use what happened in the past to help you make good decisions. And you end up in a very uncertain environment, one where strange things happen from competitors and government legislation and all kinds of other factors which put you in an uncertain situation. And so what I have done is conducted research to look at how people make decisions in uncertain situations and in predictable situations. And for my predictable situation, I created a simulation, a computer-based simulation to challenge participants here at IMD to actually manage a mainline refrigeration appliances business. And at the same time, I also challenged a different group of participants to run the same business, but in a very uncertain environment. And what I did before I even ran the simulation is I thought about what to expect, and I thought that, well, if you give people a reasonably predictable situation, they should use the historical data, they should use the history to take advantage of to make good decisions. And I expected that they would do that. However, when I present participants with an uncertain situation in my simulation, what I would expect is that they would try and make decisions to try and control the situation, because obviously what happened in the past is going to be no reflection of what happens in the future in an uncertain situation. And I put together a nice internet-based simulation to test these differences and see how people respond. And I'd like to share my findings with you. What I did is I gave people a number of decisions to make in each of these two different environments. And I looked at the kind of decisions that they made. And what I found is, on the first hand, something you would expect, which is that when people are given a mature market, they will actually make decisions based on prediction. And so I watched decisions over time move kind of like this through the simulation, with most people spending most of their time using prediction to make decisions. And then I gave the same problem to people, the same decisions to people, but in an uncertain situation. And what you would expect is they might start out at the same place as the people who were faced with a predictable situation, but that they would over time quickly figure out that the prediction wasn't helping them, and they would move to decisions which are trying to control the environment, and they would go more like this. However, what we saw was nothing like that at all. What we saw was that people did in fact start out in the same place, but the more uncertainty they faced, the more they tried to use prediction. And it wasn't until later on in the simulation that people actually realized that prediction wasn't helping them, and they started to take advantage of a different kind of decisions, a kind of decisions that would enable them to control the situation. And so what's nice about that is that it teaches me about how people make decisions, and it also enables me to have a tremendous amount of content to talk about in class.
The rest I will skip. So what you see, and that's often happening is that in an uncertain situation, people try to get more and more data to predict things. But that doesn't mean that it's always helpful. And for that, the CAVE framework was developed based on this thing. It's from 2006, and you see 4 types of reacting. One X is about emphasis on control, and the other one is emphasis on prediction. And then you have planning, visionary, adaptive, and control. Sorry, there should be another screen here. No, never mind. I will show that later on. And then you have the scientific method, which is the CAVE method. And that's, I will show you later on because it's now not on the screen. I don't know why, but never mind. And one of the approaches in that CAVE model is about effectuation. And I presume a lot of people have not heard about effectuation. I can explain it quite shortly. I think a lot of people, a lot of you are rather familiar with cooking. Sometimes daily, sometimes not daily, but occasionally. And there are 2 different approaches when you try to cook. The causal way is planning goal-oriented and rational. Then you look at the cookbook, try to find a nice recipe, see what kind of ingredients you need. You go to the store and buy those ingredients, and you cook according what's been written in the cookbook. That's the causal way of cooking. The effectual way, and that's I've been in quite some effectuation conferences. We always also do at those conferences with all the people, is the effectual way. Then you don't look at a cookbook, but you get you look at the fridge and the cabin and see what ingredients you have and make something with the ingredients that are available. And I guess you can all presume what type of cooking you prefer to do. Most of the people, I think, have something in between, but there's one of those 2 ways of cooking are the most dominant ways, and the other one is not so dominant. You also have that type of situation when you start a business, and this is the traditional way of starting a business. You identify an opportunity, as we already said. You conduct competence analysis and market research, develop a business plan, acquire the resources and stakeholders and so on, and then you start the company. That's often taught at all kinds of business schools. But starting a business this way is shown, certainly in uncertain situations, is not very productive. The effectual way is a bit different. It starts with, who am I? What do I know? Who do I know? And what can I do with that? And then interact with all kinds of people, possible clients, possible competitors, etc., etc. And then you try to find some committed stakeholders that want to collaborate with you. And finding those stakeholders, you get new means. So new people you know, new knowledge, etc. So you can start the process again. But at a certain moment, you find a new goal which might be interesting to do. And working that out with all the committed stakeholders might even might even show a new market. A lot of companies have started that way. eBay, for example, is one of the big companies that started in this way. But also a lot of other companies started in this way.
Effectuation is a set of 5 principles describing how super entrepreneurs think, decide and act, even when the environment is unpredictable. What is it that enables entrepreneurs like Donald Trump and Richard Branson to turn everything they touch into gold? Are they simply brilliant, crafted from the right DNA? Are they really that special? How do they do it? The effectuation principles were discovered by Saras Saraswati and colleague Professor Stuart Reed. Being former entrepreneurs, they were convinced that what business schools teach isn't the answer. So they tried to bust the myth of the super entrepreneur. And with success, the myth was busted. Sarasvati's research was conducted among 27 entrepreneurs with excellent track records. Supervised by Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon, Saras distinguished a set of 5 principles from all gathered information. She called it Effectuation. Principle 1. Bird in the hand. Who am I? What do I know? Whom do I know? We are taught entrepreneurs are goal-focused and then search for means, the outside-in approach. The opposite is true. An entrepreneur starts with a means assessment and then constructs imagined ends. The second principle, affordable loss. Not focusing on the upside based on prediction and historic data, but focus on the downside. How can I limit my possible loss? Crazy quilt. Co-creation with self-selected stakeholders. We are taught entrepreneurs are brilliant in solving puzzles. How can I beat my competitors? How do I best position myself in the market? Entrepreneurs, however, don't puzzle. They co-create with stakeholders they trust, who are willing to pre-commit themselves. The fourth principle is the lemonade principle. Leverage contingencies. Effectuation is action-oriented. The future doesn't come from trends and protocols. It is created by decisions and acting by the pilot in the plane. Entrepreneurs don't think, decide and act in a causal, linear process. The process is cyclical. Constantly open to their environment, they reassess and expand their available means and leverage constraints on their imagined ends. This doesn't make it a process of trial and error based on luck. It's cyclical and enables entrepreneurs to be in control when prediction doesn't work. Being entrepreneurial and in control is no longer exclusive to the Trumps and Bransons of this world.
So, in short, what's effectuation versus causation is the bird in hand principle. You start with who you are, what you know, and then select an opportunity. And you don't start with an opportunity because a lot of people don't have an opportunity, don't have brilliant ideas. The affordable loss is that and that has to do also with the risk-taking part, I think. So experienced entrepreneurs don't invest in what they can, what they expect to return, which is more a market management way of doing. But they invest in what they can afford to lose, and that's not only money but also in time or whatever. And also entrepreneurs don't think that their people around them are competitors, but they can be helpful. A nice way to show it is most of the people prefer to go to a place where, for example, 3 types of shoe stores are next to each other, because then they have the most choice. Only a very small amount go to a store which is working alone. So those three shoe stores are not competitors, but they are stakeholders. They are helping each other. And the lemonade principle, what they also do is, if unexpected things happen, they don't avoid them, they don't try to avoid them, but they try to look for them. So if the nature changes, if for example, the oil is not coming to Europe again anymore, there are a lot of real good entrepreneurs that find that as an opportunity, and they sell, for example, electricity cars or other things that helps to solve the problems. And the last one is that sure, you can't change the whole world, but you can change always what's close to you. So if you react, if you do things, the world around you can change. So the change in the world is not without your interaction. But sure, those are 2 different ways of looking at it. The reality is always much more complicated. And what you see here is a screen, a way how entrepreneurs and managers are working together or are placed on this prediction control scheme. And what you see is that corporate managers always, most of them, they value prediction. They like prediction. They want to predict things. They want to make market research, etc. While expert entrepreneurs prefer high on control and don't like the prediction. And for novice entrepreneurs are more in between and so on. And you have other types, the VCs, business angels, etc. They have a different way of going on, working with prediction and control. And this is what Saraswati said. I don't show the video at the moment because that would take too much. But what she found is that they hate market research. So they really don't like market research. And there are a lot of examples from entrepreneurs that refuse to trust what the market research showed. And they did quite the opposite and were very successful. So they don't prefer predictive information, but they work on another way. For example, to work with the things they can control. It's in their environment which they can work with. And they change the goals if the means change. So if things change, they change. They go for another goal and they work for another way to do it. And they're also open for surprises. They like surprises. I know a lot of people that prefer entrepreneurship, that always when they travel by plane, they always talk with the people around them or that sit next to them in the airplane. And most of them it's nice, but now and then they also find a way to work with that person and find new opportunities. So now I'll show you a little video. The whole video is shown here under on YouTube. It's of Saraswati, who had a talk in Bilbao for the European community. It's a video for more than an hour, but I placed a few things out of it, which shows, I think, what I want to talk about this one. She's explaining also effectuation, but that's too long for now to listen. But if you want to show the whole video, it's very interesting, I think. And also the question and answers are very interesting. But this is only a short one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, señoras y señores. It's an honor from the Commission to welcome you to this Superintendent lesson, Innovation in Enterprise here in
The most important question is, why are we teaching entrepreneurship the way we are? Why we have, especially in Europe, we have this history of creating science education, right? Since Francis Bacon wrote Novum Organum, and we took on science. We did not teach science the way we teach entrepreneurship. We don't go and teach a bunch of people and say, oh, do you want to be a scientist? You know, we'll teach you how. And the way we'll decide science curriculum is whether you actually become a scientist and create some inventions or not, right? We would have never gotten past the 18th, 19th century. We would still be living in the 18th century values if we had built science education that way. Instead, we got lucky and we decided that we are going to teach it to everybody. Anybody who had access to education gets to know science. And that's how we are able to build a society capable of scientific reasoning, irrespective of how many people become science. And then we could also invest in infrastructure for doing science for the benefit of humanity and for the benefit of society for the most part. However, you might want to disagree with me on that. And we are able to build a society capable of science and reasoning because everybody has it and different people use it in different ways to build better worlds for themselves and in the process also for others. So now let me show you in 3 very quick slides the power of using the framework to develop content, right? So let's start with just, first of all, the emphasis as you go on the control axis is much more
what you here see is the cave network, which is the same as the other one before.
Relationship seeking rather than resource seeking. And if you look at entrepreneurship curricula anywhere, that is literally zero on relationship. Almost everything we teach is on resource seeking, right? So, but now let's look at some existing content and say, can we populate this 2 by 2? What are we teaching? So I already told you the Effectual. I got like 15 minutes to tell you the whole story. Maybe I spent 20 minutes. I've told you this already, but look at some of the other things that we have, right? We are teaching trial and error, testing and experimentation, seeking help, how to get help information, feedback. We are teaching agility and nimbleness and resilience. You will see all of these things in different courses, all ad hoc, by the way. There's no single place where you get all of these things. Or you get this whole thing from Silicon Valley or so-called ideas of Silicon Valley, which is like prototyping, the market opportunity, navigator, lean startup. You would have heard of a lot of these things. Then there is traditional business planning, which still, it's amazing how that survives 30 years after people have argued this does not work and you need to be doing something better than this. And then we have business model canvas, and we still do pitch competitions all the time. Recently, there is a little bit more on interesting movements that are coming from and they're navigating the space in a different way. And we also have a couple of things that is actually coming from research that is feeding into this space. But see very quickly that there is not much of a game in this bottom right quadrant, except effectuation at this point. And even as a person who has worked in effectuation for so long, I don't believe that that is the only game in town, right? So we need to be thinking about how to work with that bottom right quadrant. So you need to identify gaps. For example, one set of gaps is existing content overemphasizes prediction, goal clarity, the importance of resources, and it oversamples on success, right? And really doesn't teach people the relationship between success and failure, which is what we really want to do. So it underemphasizes uncertainty, goal ambiguity. How many entrepreneurs actually start with a brilliant idea? Pretty close to zero. Don't take my word for it. Look at your favorite innovative unicorn company and go look at what happened in the early stages. Airbnb. People thought it was a stupid idea, and it was. Right? The idea that somebody is going to pay to come and lie on your mattress in your unused bedroom is really not. But they had to pay rent in San Francisco, and they were running out of money, and they happened to have that. So it was affordable loss for them to try. So if you go look at the history of Airbnb, as I said, pick your company, but go look carefully at the early history, and you will see the Effectual process in action here. And you will see a lot of this uncertainty, goal ambiguity. You will see all the relational stuff that they went through, and the way failure becomes an important part of building a great venture. All right. So we can also use this same thing to think about the scientific method and the entrepreneurial method. So I just want to show you the power of building something that's based on a framework and not ad hoc things that people say, oh, let's go talk to that person, or let's look at that, oh, the worst thing. Let's look at that person's latest tweet because that person happens to be a multi-billionaire or something. And I'm like, okay, you do know that you're paying through your nose to take my classes in this university, and you're learning from YouTube. And I'm like, great, I get paid no matter what. You go learn from YouTube, right? Scientific method is about understanding nature. Entrepreneurship method is about unleashing what is already there with us and in our control. And scientific method deliberately tries not to prescribe purposes, right? And even if the data is clear, we as a people have to come together, and it's usually at the macro level. But this one, at the micro level, small groups of people, it's a method for creating new goals and new purposes worth achieving. Again, the method doesn't prescribe what they are, but the method prescribes a method for you to get to goals. And the more interesting thing is, every goal you come up with is already viable because it's based on your ideas, things within your control, and somebody else committing something real to your venture. So you're not predicting it every step of the way. Every new goal you come up with is also viable. So when we think about this thing, and why should policymakers or people in the ecosystem, people beyond entrepreneurs care about this thing, or just the people who do research here?
So that is the framework she's presenting now. The CAVE is for Causal, Adaptive, Visionary, and Effectuation. That's the CAVE model. And you see here the different production, the different ways, which fits to all the 4 quadrants. And I also show you the 3 types of uncertainty: the state uncertainty, the effect uncertainty, and response uncertainty, with different logics. They fit to with different mechanisms and different outcomes. And you see that state uncertainty fits quite well to predictive tests, the lean predictive tests, while response uncertainty fits quite well to effectuation, and effect uncertainty is more a hybrid way to do. So this is all clear, and what I did is put the CAVE framework and the uncertainty framework. I put them together, and that's the paper I'm writing now for the Effectuation conference in November in Antwerp, where you have the state uncertainty that fits very well with the causal way of working. The effect uncertainty fits on the linear, on the diagonal quite well, while the response uncertainty fits very well to the effectuation way of working. Now, this is the framework, and I also have 2 examples to work with it and you can use in your classroom or in other ways to work with students or other ways. First of all, the effectual ask. As I already showed in a previous slide, you see that starting entrepreneurs, novice entrepreneurs, often work with effectuation and causation in an equal way, while expert entrepreneurs tend to use more the effectual way. So what you can do is tell students to deliberately use one of these 4 quadrants in what to ask and how to ask, and that helps them to get more experience in quite a way. That's what Saraswati researched in 2024. For example, if you ask commitment, if you want to have commitment, you should ask, what would it take for you to? And if you want information, you can also do ask if I give you X, then you will gain Y. And here are a few examples. If you want an adaptive way of prototyping, you can ask, can you please advise me on what I should pay for that prototype? The causal way is, what price do you charge to build me a prototype? The visionary way is, here's where you should build me, here's why you should build me a prototype. And the effectual way is, what would it take for you to build me a prototype? So you ask 4 times the same thing, but in 4 different ways. With quite a difference in the response you might expect from those people. Now, here are the same way in the rational exchange. Would you please build me a prototype, and so on? Or causal, would you please introduce me to someone who can build me a prototype? So that's asking for information. And effectual, if you were me, how would you build a prototype? So that's more collaborative. And the third one is co-creative exchange. Is, should we build a prototype in adaptive? What kind of prototype should we be building? How can we incorporate what we both want into a prototype? Or the effectual way, how can we build something new here? and that might not be a prototype, but something else. So what you see is, if you let students deliberately use that framework, you see that they, and this is from the same paper, that they change from novice entrepreneurs quite fast to expert entrepreneurs. This is research of Saraswati. The next one is a research I did myself. It's about Socratic teaching. I also used a model of Fayol and Gailey for that, the education level. Sorry, the education model. And what you also see here is that there are 4 elements in the educational level: the what, the why, and the how, and for whom, and for which results. I presume that the for whom, students, for which results, becoming entrepreneurial or becoming more confident is quite well clear, but the what, the why, and the how is not so clear. So if you are a teacher, traditional teachers often say, if you study this, then you get your credits. While my approach, my standard approach, is often, what would it take for you to work on this project? But you can also ask someone who is very experienced in those things, and he often tells learning this is important for your future because he has the experience. And if you have nothing of no knowledge at all, or have nothing to give them, you can also ask them, what would it do to do? What would you like to do this assignment? This is the how to ask. Doing that, and I didn't find the relation if you have to use the same quadrant, but you can ask for commitment, you can ask for insights, for knowledge, or for help. And you can use that in 4 different types of what to ask: the technology search, pattern recognition, image futures, and stock of experience. So you have different ways of doing this. This is a training program which I give to some people to make teachers teach more entrepreneurial. So it's not about that one of those 4 quadrants is the best way to do it, but you have to be capable of switching between those 4 quadrants. And sometimes a teacher is very good at one of the quadrants and not good at the other ones. So you might have to find a teacher who is good at another quadrant if you want to give the complete set of ways of teaching those things. So those are the 4 types. Here are the references, which I will skip, but you will see them later on in the slides I will show you. That is shortly my presentation. We have 10 minutes left now. That's quite a good schedule, I think, for questions or things to ask or discussions, or perhaps some comments to me, or some ideas you want to share. So please and tell what you would like to tell me.
Thank you very much, Ruth. You made this difficult topic very easy to understand. Thank you very much for that. And I would invite participants if they have any questions. So please ask your question or write in your the chat or question and answer session. So yeah, we are already looking into chat session. So let's continue with that. Yeah, meanwhile, I have already typed one question. Are universities overtraining prediction and undertraining adaptation? What are your thoughts on
think
this?
Most of the universities do so. One of the problems is that in the university you want to predict what's happening because you have, for example, 10 weeks or some fixed schedule where you have to finish your program. And also exam committees, they want to be clear that someone is giving an assessment which our students prepared for. I've heard once from a lecturer from a professor of the UK, and he talked to former students, and he said after a few years, some of the students come back and they say, there's one lecture I learned almost more. I learned more from that than all the other lectures together. And that was the lecture where you change 1 week for the exam, you change what the exam would be. And that's something which is very hard to deal with exam committees, because it's unpredictable and it's not fair, etc., etc. But students think that's what they learned most of it. So that might be an answer to what you said. I also see another question of, and now it's hard to pronounce for me, Oluwagbenga. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. I've heard of Effectuation, and it's a very interesting framework. I'm wondering how to pronounce it. Can you tell me how to pronounce it? Your name.
I think the person left the meeting since then.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Good.
Yeah, so again, from my side, because I assume that most of the colleagues here somehow they have link with the engineering curricula or engineering field, and like me, there should be more who are interested in knowing how can we include this into engineering curricula, these cave methods and effectuation, and in case we are not able to offer a complete course on this, but some days, some lectures, or some weeks to make our students acquaintance with this. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think most of the engineering curricula are quite good, but they are focusing on a very predictable environment. And sometimes the environment is rather predictable, so that's not bad at all. But what they also should learn is that the environment can change. So students should also learn how to get in contact with stakeholders, how to deal with stakeholders, talk with stakeholders, and try to find what really bothers them and how they can solve solutions. But also, because that is solving problems, but finding really new ways of doing things might also be one of the issues in engineering programs, how to develop something completely new. And I think most of those times they will develop something which is not so useful. But starting to develop ideas in what they can do with what they have, and then get in contact with some people and try to find people around them that are interested in it and collaborate with them, and then change what they thought would be an interesting idea to what also shows or might be interesting for those stakeholders, can be very useful. When I was in the business incubator, I think 100% of the people that joined the business incubator changed the way they thought a new company would be successful. So don't think as engineers, you shouldn't think that your solution is the solution people are waiting for and is the best way. Always collaborate, always try to find other people, and then you see that the environment might, or the community might think of another completely different way they want to deal with and they want to think about than other people. and finding new things with existing technology. I think there's quite a good example, rather old perhaps, but if you would have asked in the 80s or the 90s if people would be interested in finding a mobile equipment which is so large that you can't put it in your pocket and it's too small to put on your desk as a laptop because the screen is too small, all the people would have said no. But look how the tablets nowadays are incorporated in all our lives. So sometimes don't think too much on market research, but try to find someone who is willing to work with the idea you have and work it out and develop it further and further.
Thanks.
That sounds...
Yeah, thank you very much. One last question from my side, because we have only 1 minute, but how to assess? So with respect to assessment, if we have this kind of task to students, then how can we assess if they have learned these concepts?
What you should do, what I always do, is I don't assess the results, but I only assess the process. Do they know how to use the steps, the 5 principles, how to use them, and can they show that they use them? So that's the main thing. I also see how can effectuation be embedded or measured in a final year project module. Well, it's more or less the same. Yeah, you can try to do that. You can, in fact, I'm doing this for the master I developed, which starts next year, the data-driven business, where I also use effectuation. And what I do is I let them start with an idea they can develop from what they have, develop things, collaborate. And what I assess then is, do they meet all the 5 criteria, all the 5 steps of effectuation? Do they have clarity about their means, and not only the final means, but also knowledge and a network, etc., etc. How did they deal with setbacks? How do they develop the future, following their own way? I always forget things, but so I follow those 5 steps, and they must show me how they used it. And sometimes I have a few times with another program I did it the same way. They find very interesting new ideas, but even if they don't, it's good as long as they follow the process and if they show that they understand how the process works. And that can be done in 10-20 weeks in a fixed time period. The big thing is that they always must follow at least 1 iteration, so they can collect new data, new ideas, but also new data about what they thought about, and they have to use those new data again in developing the product they want to develop further. Is that?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ruth. And we are out of time. So the participants in few days, then they can look into the recorded video. Once again, I say thank you very much to you and all the participants. And have a nice evening. And depending on the time.
Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or remarks later on.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, bye.